It started, like most suburban wars do, with a strongly worded note. Taped to the community bulletin board near the mailbox cluster on Briarwood Lane, the note was written in thick, aggressive black Sharpie and read, "Please pick up after your..." "Dogs! This neighborhood is not a toilet!" The tape corners flapped slightly in the breeze, like flags of passive aggression waving to every passerby. Most people barely glanced at it. After all, these kinds of notes weren't unusual. But those who took the time to read it all the way through knew exactly who had posted it. The handwriting, the tone, the exclamation points, it all screamed Karen, not just a Karen. The Karen of Briarwood Lane. She lived in the big house on the corner with the perfectly trimmed hedges, the doorbell camera with motion alerts, and a front lawn that looked like it had been hand-manicured by elves. Karen wore oversized sunglasses even on cloudy days and treated HOA guidelines as though they were holy scripture. She didn't own a doggy bag dispenser, but she sure carried opinions like weapons, loaded and ready. Luis, who lived across the street and walked his Labrador, Buster, every morning, stood in front of the sign, shaking his head. He chuckled under his breath as Buster did his business in the grass nearby, right next to a sign that read, "No dogs." On lawn, Luis dutifully pulled out a bag and scooped it up like a responsible citizen. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "She's acting like someone declared war on her tulips." Word traveled quickly down the block. The note wasn't really about dog poop. It was about control. Karen had a sixth sense for detecting things she disapproved of. Whether it was trash cans left out an hour too long, cars parked slightly over, the curb or patio furniture that didn't match the neighborhood's neutral aesthetic, Karen noticed it, and she documented it. There were rumors she had a spreadsheet. Still, it wasn't like she was wrong. The occasional unclaimed pile of dog poop was admittedly gross, but the neighborhood wasn't exactly drowning in it. Maybe once a week, someone's dog had an emergency, and the owner didn't have a bag. People were human. Dogs were dogs. But Karen didn't believe in gray areas. Everything was either appropriate or a threat to property value. Then came the kicker, the hypocrisy. The very next morning, Karen herself was spotted letting her white poodle, Princess Buttercup, roam freely on the community greenbelt. No leash, no supervision, no poop bags, just a sparkly collar, a rhinestone, sweater, and the air of canine royalty. Denise, who lived 3 doors down and had a sharp eye for neighborhood drama, was the first to see it. She stood on her porch, sipping coffee, when Buttercup trotted across her front yard like she was inspecting it for design flaws. "Hey, Karen," Denise called out, her tone casual but loud enough to carry. "Your poodle just did the thing you yelled about yesterday." Karen, dressed in yoga pants and a visor that said, "Good vibes only," didn't even turn around. She simply waved. Over her shoulder with a practiced half-smile, the kind that said, "I hear you, but I'm choosing to ignore you." "Oh, Buttercup's dainty," she called back. "She only goes in our yard." Denise blinked and looked down. Buttercup was, at that very moment, squatting in her hydrangeas. It was such poetic timing it almost felt scripted. Later that day, Denise texted a picture of the scene to the neighborhood group chat. She captioned it, "Exhibit A, Dainty Destruction." Reactions came in instantly. Cry-laughing emojis, face palms, a popcorn gif. Chris, who lived next to the park, chimed in. "I knew it. Karen's dog has been using my yard like it's a porta-potty. I thought it was raccoons." Luis added, "She actually said Buttercup only goes in her yard. That dog's got a tour schedule." Still, no one confronted her directly. This was Karen. She had a way of turning any accusation into an attack on neighborhood unity. And besides, people had better things to do. Or so they thought. The following day, another note appeared. Same board, same handwriting. "Be a good neighbor. Clean up after your pets. If you see something, say something." The tone was not only accusatory, but somehow smug, like she had deputized herself as the dog poop sheriff of Briarwood Lane. But now it was starting to wear thin. Did she not see her own dog yesterday? Someone asked in the group chat. Oh, she saw, replied Greg, who lived on the corner. She just lives in a world where rules apply to everyone else, and yet no one wanted to be the first to knock on Karen's door. She had a way of flipping the script so fast you'd find yourself apologizing to her by the end of the conversation. The last time someone complained about her motion sensor floodlight blinding their bedroom, Karen had replied by filing an HOA request to ban excessive curtain transparency. She wasn't just difficult, she was strategic. Then came what would become known as Buttercup's morning parade. For 3 days in a row, Karen let Buttercup outside to wander the neighborhood freely. No leash, no Karen in sight. Just Buttercup, strutting like she paid the mortgage. She visited porches, dug in flower beds, and on one memorable morning, knocked over a lawn gnome and barked at it until someone came outside and apologized to her. Luis started taking pictures. Denise recorded a short video. And someone, one knew who, began tagging the poops with little biodegradable flags that read, "Courtesy of Buttercup." Karen, either oblivious or deliberately ignoring it, continued her morning walks like nothing was wrong. She waved at neighbors, complimented their landscaping, and once even asked Vanessa across the street if she needed help printing more poop warning signs. By this point, the entire neighborhood was simmering. The original note had been removed, but not forgotten. It had evolved from a simple reminder into a symbol of Karen's complete detachment from her own rules. People were no longer laughing. They were planning. And all the while, Buttercup kept pooping. By the middle of the week, the quiet frustration that had been bubbling under the surface of Briarwood Lane was beginning to froth. Not just because of the poop, although, yes, that was still a central issue, but because of the principle of it all. The hypocrisy was just too rich to ignore. Karen had set the tone with her public demands. The notes on the community board had started out with passive-aggressive overtones, but they were quickly escalating into full-blown declarations. "Let's keep our streets clean," one read, adorned with clip art paw prints. Another one went up the following day. "Only you can prevent brown spots on lawns." She was turning into a one-woman anti-poop campaign, except of course that her own dog had apparently not received the memo. It wasn't just a one-time thing anymore. Buttercup had now become a regular sight on the neighborhood greenbelt and front lawns, trotting leash-free with the kind of confidence only a small dog with a delusional sense of grandeur could possess. She would sniff a bush, spin in a circle, and then squat as if she were blessing the earth itself. Afterward, she'd strut away, tail high, with no hint of shame, and no sign of Karen. The neighborhood group chat, an otherwise sleepy thread, used for things like bake sales and missing Amazon packages, had turned into a crime investigation forum. Denise posted a photo first. It was blurry, taken through a screen door, but clearly showed Buttercup mid-squat on her front lawn. The caption was simple and scathing. Day 2. Same spot. No Karen. Luis followed up a few hours later with a short video clip. "Caught. This one near the community garden," he wrote. "Buttercup's making her rounds. Still no leash. Still no cleanup." Chris chimed in with a screenshot from his security camera. It showed Karen herself walking ahead of Buttercup on the sidewalk, coffee in hand, not even glancing back as the dog paused in a neighbor's flower bed. "She doesn't even look anymore," he said. "It's like she trained herself not to see." There was a brief moment of levity when Greg photoshopped a wanted poster using Buttercup's image. The caption read, "Wanted for serial lawn violations. Approach with caution. May bite or bless your garden." People reacted, with laughing emojis, but underneath the humor, frustration was mounting. The real tipping point came when Karen responded. Instead of acknowledging the issue or expressing the slightest hint of contrition, she doubled down with a post of her own. "Let's all be mature about this," she wrote. Throwing stones doesn't solve anything. Be part of the solution, not the pollution. That smiley face was the final straw for some. Did she just rhyme? Denise shot back immediately. This isn't Dr. Seuss and the dog poo blues. She seriously thinks we're the problem? Added Vanessa. She's gaslighting the whole block. Greg summed it up best. She weaponized wholesomeness. For a moment, the group chat went quiet, as if everyone were trying to process the sheer audacity. Then, one by one, the stories started spilling out. Karen's list of infractions was longer than anyone realized. Last year she lectured me for leaving my trash bin out. 10 minutes past pickup, said Carlos. She actually reported it to the HOA. 10 minutes. Remember the Halloween thing? Denise reminded everyone. She made a fuss about gruesome decorations scaring kids, then left her 12-foot Santa on the roof until Easter. She told my wife our gnome collection was tacky and made a joke about mental clutter, said Luis. I didn't even know what that meant until I realized she was calling us unstable. It became clear that this wasn't just about poop. It was about years of nitpicking, microaggressions, and selective rule enforcement. The poodle poop was simply the match that finally lit the fuse. But it wasn't until young Emma got involved that the situation truly exploded. That Saturday morning had started off beautifully. Blue skies, birds chirping, kids riding scooters, neighbors chatting as they trimmed hedges or cleaned garages. Emma had drawn a large hopscotch grid on the sidewalk with pastel chalk the evening before, and now she was playing on it in sparkly sneakers, counting out loud as she jumped. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then right in the middle of square 5 it happened. Her foot landed with a splat, a sick, squishy noise that echoed louder than it should have. Her scream was immediate and piercing. Mom! Vanessa came flying out of the house like a rocket. She froze at the sight of her daughter standing there, one shoe half submerged in a pile of what could only be described as canine betrayal. Oh hell no, Vanessa hissed, lifting Emma off the sidewalk like a soldier rescuing a wounded comrade. Get in the house. Now. Denise had heard the scream too and rushed out, only to find Vanessa standing over the chalk-covered sidewalk, hands on her hips, steam practically rising from her ears. She said Buttercup only poops in her yard, Vanessa snapped. That's it. I'm done. This is war. Denise, always the instigator when needed, nodded solemnly. I'll grab my phone. But Vanessa wasn't interested in digital evidence anymore. She wiped Emma's shoe clean with enough force to erase its memory and marched across the street, fists clenched. A small crowd gathered at their windows, peeking through blinds and curtains like it was live theater. Karen was out front, watering her flower beds. She wore a sun hat, a pink gardening apron, and a serene expression. She looked like someone preparing to pose for the cover of Suburban Serenity Monthly. Vanessa did not stop to admire the view. Karen, she said, loud and clear. Karen turned, slowly adjusting her sunglasses. Oh, hello, Vanessa. Lovely morning, isn't it? Your dog pooped on the sidewalk where my daughter plays. Karen blinked, as if confused. Buttercup? Oh, no. She's very particular about where she... I saw it, Vanessa interrupted. We all did. She's out here every morning, leash-free, leaving little landmines all over the block. Karen exhaled like a disappointed teacher. Vanessa, I understand you're upset, but we shouldn't let emotions dictate. Emma stepped in it. And you have the nerve to post notes accusing everyone else? Karen's voice shifted ever so slightly, from patronizing to defensive. Buttercup is a free spirit. She needs room to roam. And frankly, I think we could all benefit from being a little less uptight about nature. Are you seriously telling me to embrace dog poop right now? I'm just saying we should be focusing on gratitude, Karen said, straightening. Maybe if people focused on beauty and kindness, they wouldn't be so obsessed with waste. Vanessa didn't respond right away. She looked around at the neat lawns, the chalk-stained sidewalk, the cluster of neighbors pretending not to eavesdrop from porches and windows. Then she said, calm and slow, "Gratitude, huh?" Karen nodded, seemingly proud of her own restraint. "Fine," Vanessa said. "Then I hope you'll be very grateful when the HOA sees the video footage." Karen's smile faltered. Vanessa turned on her heel and walked away, with the entire neighborhood watching. Buttercup, as if on cue, trotted over to sniff a bush, paused, and started to squat again. Denise pulled out her phone. "Smile, Buttercup." The next morning, the air on Briarwood Lane was thick with anticipation. Not tension exactly, but a charged, buzzing kind of energy, like a thunderstorm waiting to crack open the sky. People sipped their coffee slower, lingered a little longer by their mailboxes, and casually adjusted lawn ornaments while keeping a trained eye on the corner house. Karen didn't know it, but she was the star of a suburban soap opera, and the neighborhood was glued to the unfolding drama like it was primetime TV. Every movement, every word she uttered from that moment on was going to be observed, dissected, and, most importantly, remembered. At 8:03 a.m., the moment finally arrived. Karen stepped out of her house in her usual morning uniform, yoga pants, a lavender hoodie, and that now infamous good vibes only visor. Buttercup trailed behind her, the tiny poodle looking as dainty and unaware as ever, with a pink bow clipped between her ears and a matching sweater that probably cost more than most of the neighbors' monthly water bills. But this time, the routine was slightly different. Karen paused at the edge of her driveway, looked down the street as if scanning for trouble, and then crouched beside Buttercup, whispering something in the dog's ear. A few houses away, Denise was peeking through, her blinds like a spy, phone in hand. "Show time," she whispered to no one. Karen looked both ways again, then stood up and began walking briskly toward the greenbelt. Buttercup waddled after her, untethered by any leash, as usual. Luis, who had been raking leaves just a few doors down, casually pulled out his phone and started recording. Not obviously, of course. He was no amateur. He held it low, angled toward his hip, and pretended to inspect his lawn as the camera captured everything. Karen made it to the greenbelt and stopped. She let out a theatrical sigh, as if this simple act of being outdoors was exhausting. Buttercup trotted a few feet ahead and circled a tree, tail wagging, and then, like a prophecy fulfilled, she squatted. Karen glanced around, saw no one, or so she thought, and turned back toward her house. No bag, no cleanup. Just a quick 180 and a march back to safety. That was all Denise needed. She uploaded her own footage to the neighborhood group chat. Day 4, same dog, same poop, still no pickup. Seconds later, Luis added his video. Then Chris chimed in, with a zoomed-in freeze frame of Karen mid-turn, looking directly at the poop and making the conscious decision to ignore it. The neighborhood exploded. This time, there were no emojis, no jokes, just righteous fury and a deep collective sense of, "We've had enough." Carlos posted, "That's it. I'm riding to the HOA today. Video attached." Vanessa, never one to mince words, added, "Send every photo, every video, every time she's lied. Let's flood the inbox. Karen wants a crusade? She just got one." Even Greg, usually more of an observer than a participant, wrote, "I say we make it official. No more passive aggression. It's time for action." And action came swiftly. That afternoon, a special email from the HOA pinged into everyone's inboxes. Subject, urgent, neighborhood pet sanitation policy enforcement. The letter outlined the rising number of complaints and the mounting photographic and video evidence of repeat violations. It reminded residents that leash laws and pet waste disposal were not just rules, they were municipal ordinances. Violators would be fined, starting immediately, but that wasn't the part that made jaws drop. The letter continued. Due to the documented and repeated offenses by a specific pet owner, an official citation has been filed with the city's Animal Control Division. In addition, The HOA is initiating a formal review of this resident's compliance with community standards. Further action, including community service mandates or HOA penalty fees, may follow. Though it didn't name names, everyone knew exactly who it was about. The chat was lit with reactions. Yes, finally. She brought this on herself. I hope that good vibes only visor keeps her dry when the storm hits. Within hours, it was clear Karen had received the email too. Buttercup was suddenly confined to the yard, complete with a temporary crooked little plastic fence that Karen had clearly bought in a rush. It didn't match the pristine aesthetic of her usual decor, which made it even more delicious to witness. Karen herself seemed subdued. She didn't wave to passing neighbors like usual. No morning notes appeared on the bulletin board. Her blinds were drawn tighter. She had been, for lack of a better word, humbled. But the neighborhood wasn't done yet. Chris organized a poop patrol group. Volunteers who walked the block in the mornings and evenings, armed with biodegradable flags and doggy bags. It started out as a joke, but within 2 days, it had become a legitimate community effort. Kids even got involved, creating colorful little signs that read things like, "Scoop the poop or pay the price." And "Don't be crappy, clean it up." It wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about the principle. The neighborhood had taken back its dignity. Then, on Sunday afternoon, something unexpected happened. A folding table appeared at the edge of the greenbelt. On it were a stack of fresh poop bags, a small trash bin, and a laminated sign that read, "Let's keep our lawns clean, together." Next to the table sat Karen. She wore jeans and a sweatshirt instead of her usual curated attire. No visor, no sunglasses. She looked normal, even a little sheepish. Buttercup sat quietly beside her on a leash, an actual leash, with a small yellow bow in her fur instead of the usual rhinestones. A few neighbors walked by, eyeing her warily. She smiled politely, said hello, offered them poop bags. Some accepted, some didn't. But everyone noticed. Denise was the first to speak. "So, you starting a new business?" Karen laughed awkwardly. "No, just trying to make amends. I know I haven't exactly been the best neighbor." Louis stopped walking Buster and raised an eyebrow. "What changed?" Karen shrugged, looking out at the greenbelt. "Emma stepping in that mess. It made me think. I've been so busy judging everyone else I forgot to look at my own dog. Literally." There was a pause. Then Carlos walked over and took a poop bag from the table. "Good start," he said. Karen smiled. "Just a little. I know I've got a lot more to do." Buttercup sneezed in agreement, and just like that, the Cold War of Briarwood Lane began to thaw. A few weeks later, the neighborhood had settled into a calm, almost eerie rhythm. The kind that comes after a storm, when the clouds part and the world pretends it never rained. Briarwood Lane looked as it always did. Green lawns, trimmed hedges, front porches with wind chimes and seasonal wreaths. But something beneath the surface had shifted. Karen had not returned to her old habits. That much was clear. Buttercup, now almost permanently attached to a sparkly retractable leash, had undergone what could only be described as a personality adjustment. The once snobby Poodle who sauntered around the block like she owned it now, kept to the sidewalks and looked up at Karen every few minutes, as if asking for permission before sniffing anything. Karen, to her credit, seemed more present. She carried bags, she scooped, she even waved at neighbors, sometimes with a smile that was half apology, half humble pie. People noticed. Of course they did. Vanessa, always sharp-eyed, kept her own internal scorecard. 3 weeks and no poop sightings, she muttered one morning, sipping her coffee as Emma chalked up a new hopscotch path. Karen might actually be rehabilitated. Denise nodded as she watered her petunias. Honestly, I think public shame might have worked better than any fine. I don't know, Louise added from across the fence. I think Emma's scream, "That day is what really broke the curse," Like a fairy tale, Greg chimed in as he passed on his bike. Only with more dog crap and fewer magical frogs. Even so, the neighborhood hadn't entirely forgiven Karen. They were watching. Every step she took was still under quiet scrutiny. If Buttercup even so much as circled twice in someone's yard, curtains twitched. Phones came out. There were no more videos posted, yet, but the unspoken warning lingered in the air, once bitten, twice shy, and then came the barbecue. It was Chris's idea, a way to reset the neighborhood vibe, as he put it. Spring had officially arrived, bringing with it longer days, warmer evenings, and the scent of freshly cut grass mixed with grilled meat. The HOA agreed to let residents use the Greenbelt Park, and within days, folding chairs, coolers, lawn games, and string lights were arranged like a Pinterest board come to life. Everyone showed up. The Rodriguezes brought carne asada. Greg supplied a vat of homemade mac and cheese that could feed a small nation. Denise baked her famous strawberry shortcake, which vanished in minutes. There were kids playing tag, teenagers rolling their eyes at everything, and adults sipping wine from plastic tumblers like it was their first taste of freedom in years. And then, fashionably late, Karen arrived. She didn't come empty-handed. She brought a tray of homemade dog biscuits, shaped like bones, tied in little bags with twine, and a small Tupperware of gluten-free brownies. She set them both on the food table with a note, made with gratitude, and yes, Buttercup stayed home. For a long moment, no one said anything. Then Denise walked up, picked up a dog treat, and popped it into her purse. "For Biscuit," she said, nodding. Carlos grabbed a brownie. "Smells like a peace offering." Karen smiled nervously. "It is. Kind of. I'm still learning." Vanessa appeared beside them, arms folded. She looked at Karen for a long second, then said, "You remembered the poop bags too?" Karen opened her tote and held one up like a trophy. 3 rolls. That got a laugh. A real one. After that, things started to soften. Karen mingled. She chatted about gardening with Denise, asked Luis for tips on planting succulents, and even helped Greg pick up a spilled plate of hot dogs. Slowly, the armor cracked, and the Karen that had once been the neighborhood nuisance became something else. Human. Near sunset, Chris brought out a Bluetooth speaker, and music floated across the park. Kids danced barefoot on the grass, parents swayed gently to old songs, and someone started a cornhole tournament that got unexpectedly competitive. Karen sat on a picnic blanket, watching the scene. For the first time in weeks, she looked relaxed. Buttercup was absent, true, but the leash dangled from her wrist like a silent promise, a reminder that she was, in her own strange way, trying. Eventually, Vanessa wandered over and plopped down beside her, 2 tumblers in hand. "Peace?" she offered. Karen took one. Definitely peace. They sat in silence for a bit, sipping, as the stars blinked into the darkening sky. "You know," Vanessa said finally, "people don't change overnight. But you've stuck with it. That counts." Karen nodded. "I used to think being right was more important than being kind." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "And now? Now I know that when your dog poops on someone's hopscotch square, it's time to reflect." Vanessa burst out laughing. "Okay, that might be the most honest thing you've ever said." Karen laughed too, genuinely. "I deserved everything I got." Vanessa sipped her drink, looking around the park. "Well, good news is, nobody wants to be mad forever. We just wanted honesty." Karen looked down at her lap. "Then I'll keep giving it. 1 poop bag at a time." That was when the kids ran past screaming about a piñata. Laughter rang out, and the whole neighborhood turned their heads as someone brought out a rainbow-colored dog-shaped piñata. A not-so-subtle tribute to Buttercup, no doubt. Karen chuckled. "That's definitely about me, isn't it?" Vanessa grinned. "Probably. But hey, at least you're part of the joke now." As the piñata burst and candy flew through the air, the crowd roared with delight. Kids scrambled to grab sweets, and even the adults clapped. Karen stood, brushing grass from her jeans, and stepped toward the commotion. No one flinched. No one turned away. In fact, Denise waved her over. It was a quiet kind of redemption. No speeches, no dramatic apologies. Just one neighbor, slowly working her way back into the fold. One shared joke, one kind gesture, one full poop bag at a time. By the end of 4. The night, as the music faded and chairs were folded and leftovers packed away, Karen helped stack tables and collect trash without being asked. She didn't demand recognition. She didn't quote any inspirational slogans. She simply did the work. And as she turned to leave, someone, Chris maybe, called out, "See you at the next one, Karen." She smiled, adjusted the leash still, hanging from her wrist, and said, "You bet." Then she walked home beneath the twinkle lights and the quiet stars, no longer the villain of Briarwood Lane, but simply another neighbor learning how to be better.